Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for tuning in to the Atlantic Avenue Mixed Use Plan, or AAMUP, public scoping meeting. We are addressing a few technical issues to make sure that everyone who has registered to speak is able to join the meeting today. So we will make sure that we're all set and get started in just a few minutes. Thanks, everyone, for your patience. All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome again to the Atlantic Avenue Mixed Use Plan, or AAMUP, public scoping meeting. If you are viewing us on the live stream on YouTube and have registered to speak, we will be reaching out to you with a link to sign in into the Zoom if you are registered to speak. Was dealing with a little bit of technical difficulties this afternoon. So thanks everyone for your patience and for taking time out of your busy day today. Again, you're tuning in to the public scoping meeting for the Atlantic Avenue Mixed Use Plan, or AAMUP proposal. The City Environmental Quality Review, or CEQR number for the application is 24DCP019K. If we can go to the next slide. So my name is Stephanie Shalou, and I'm the Director of the Environmental Assessment and Review Division at the New York City Department of City Planning. Evren Olker-Kajar, who is the Deputy Director of EARD, is co-hosting today's meeting. And if there are any technical difficulties on my end, Evren will take over on my behalf. We appreciate everyone's patience. And I do again want to thank everyone for taking time out of your day to attend this remote meeting. I also want to emphasize that we'll hear from everyone who wishes to speak today, and the meeting will remain open until everyone who wishes to speak has had a chance to do so. We also welcome written comments and testimony. The written comment period will extend through 5 p.m. on Friday, October 27th, 2023, and we provide written comments the same attention and consideration as comments provided live at this meeting. So we will now kick off the public scoping meeting for the Atlantic Avenue Mixed Use Plan, or AAMUP. Again, the City Environmental Quality Review, or CEQR application number is 24DCP019K. Today's date is October 17th, 2023, and the time is approximately 2:06 p.m. Next slide. Again, my name is Stephanie Shalou, Director of EARD at the Department of City Planning, chairing today's meeting. And the Department of City Planning is acting on behalf of the City Planning Commission as lead agency for this proposal's environmental review. As lead agency, the department will be responsible for overseeing the preparation and completion of the proposal's environmental impact statement, or EIS. Next slide. Joining me today are several of my colleagues from the Department of City Planning. Alex Sommer is the Director of the Department's Brooklyn office. Karenza Wood, Deputy Director of the Department's Brooklyn office. As I mentioned, Evren Olker-Kajar, Deputy Director of EARD. Louise Cafiero, Project Manager for the AAMUP proposal in the Environmental Assessment and Review Division. Jonah Rogoff, Lead Planner of the proposal in the Brooklyn office, and Jesse Hirakawa, Lead Urban Designer for the AAMUP proposal in the Brooklyn office. I'll also mention that we're joined by many DCP staff members working in the background to troubleshoot and make sure that this meeting runs smoothly. Thank you, everyone, for your support. Next slide. Oh, sorry, this slide. Together, we're here to receive your comments on the draft scope of work for the AAMUP proposal. The draft scope of work identifies the subjects that will be analyzed in the draft environmental impact statement, or DEIS, and describes the methodologies that will be used in those analyses. The draft scope of work materials are published on the Department of City Planning's website. Next slide. The purpose of today's public scoping meeting is to allow for public participation in the preparation of the DEIS at the earliest stage possible in the environmental review process. Specifically, scoping allows the public to help shape the DEIS before it is written. Towards that end, the department, as lead agency, will receive verbal testimony on the draft scope of work from elected officials, government agencies, representatives of the local community board, and the public. We also welcome written comments on the draft scope of work, and written comments can be submitted through Friday, October 27th, 2023 at 5 p.m. Next slide. At the end of the written comment period, the department as lead agency will review all comments, those we hear in live at this meeting today, as well as any written comments we have received. After carefully reviewing all comments, the department will decide what changes, if any, need to be made to the draft scope of work and will issue a final scope of work. It is the final scope of work that serves as the basis for preparing the DEIS. Next slide. Today's scoping meeting marks the beginning of the environmental review process and the public comment period for the AAMUP proposal. No decisions will be made today regarding the draft scope of work. Again, the purpose of today's meeting is to allow the public to provide their comments about the draft scope of work and to allow the department to listen to those comments. It's important for all voices to be heard today. Next slide. I will now focus on the structure of today's meeting, which will be divided into 3 parts. In the first part, representatives of the Department of City Planning's Brooklyn office will give a brief overview describing the AAMUP proposal. Then Jonathan Carey, a representative of WSP, the environmental consulting firm for the proposed project, will provide a short summary of the draft scope of work. During the second part of the meeting, we will receive comments from elected officials, government agencies, and community board representatives. And in the third and final part of the meeting, we will be receiving testimony from members of the general public. Next slide. On to a few logistics for today's meeting. If you wish to speak and plan to access the meeting online, please remember to register through the AAMUP public scoping meeting page of the NYC Engage portal, www.nyc.gov/NYC-engage. A link to join us and provide testimony will be emailed to you after you've completed the registration process, and you'll be added to our speakers list. Next slide. When it is your turn to speak, your name will be called and you'll be promoted to panelist. This will allow you to unmute your microphone and the ability to turn on your camera if you wish. There will be a short period where it appears that you're no longer in the meeting. Don't be alarmed. You'll automatically rejoin the meeting as a panelist. At that time, you'll be asked to convey your remarks, and to allow us to hear from everyone who wishes to speak, you'll be asked to limit your remarks to 3 minutes. A 3-minute countdown clock will run on the screen if you're participating online, and at the 3-minute mark, your time will expire and you'll be asked to conclude your remarks. If you choose to turn on your camera, we will be able to see you. Next slide. An additional note of instruction for those of you joining us by phone. If you wish to provide testimony via telephone, please select *9 when prompted. Listen for me to call out the last 3 digits of your phone number. At that point, you'll be given the temporary ability to share your testimony. You must press *6 to unmute your telephone, and we'll be able to hear you speak live at this meeting. When your testimony is complete or your 3 minutes have expired, whichever comes first, you will press *6 again to mute yourself. Anyone who wishes to dial in, please do register using the dial-in participant hotline information that was displayed at the beginning of this meeting. In general, please note that muting and unmuting registered speakers does take a moment, so we appreciate your patience. Next slide. Another note on time limits. Speakers, the general public, have 3 minutes to provide their testimony. There are a few exceptions to the 3-minute time limit. Elected officials, for example, are given the courtesy of jumping to the front of the queue and are not limited to 3 minutes. For those of you viewing us on live stream and wish to testify, please be mindful of potential background noise during your testimony. Make sure that the live stream is muted to avoid hearing an echo. If anyone's viewing today's presentation but does not wish to speak or provide testimony, you can also stream this meeting using the live stream links on the NYC Engage and City Planning websites on DCP's YouTube page. Next slide. If you wish to submit written testimony, it can be submitted to the Department of City Planning. Our mailing address is shown here on the screen, 120 Broadway, 31st floor, New York, New York, 10271. Attention, myself, Stephanie Shalhoub. There's also an email address that is set up for this project. The email address is shown here, 24dcp019k_dl@planning.nyc.gov. This information can all be found after today's meeting on the NYC Engage portal and the City Planning website. Again, as a reminder, written comments will be accepted by the lead agency through Friday, October 27th, 2023 at 5 p.m. Next slide. All right, if you missed any of the instructions, please do visit www.nyc.gov/NYC-engage for instructions on how to participate and provide testimony. We will now move to the first part of our meeting, where the Department of City Planning's Brooklyn office will give an overview of the proposed project. This will be followed by the environmental consultant summarizing the draft scope of work. I will now turn it over to Jonah Rogoff.
Thank you, Stephanie. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jonah Rogoff, and I serve as the lead planner for the Atlantic Avenue Mixed-Use Plan, or AAMUP. I'm also joined by Jesse Harakawa, AAMUP's lead urban designer, and who will be co-presenting with me. Just to start with a little background on the project, the AAMUP area is located along Atlantic Avenue in central Brooklyn in community districts 3 and 8, just to the north of Prospect Park, a few blocks to north, and situated in an industrially zoned area between Crown Heights, Bedford-Stuyvesant or Bed-Stuy, Fort Greene, Clinton Hill, and Prospect Heights. Next slide. At 120 feet wide, Atlantic Avenue is one of Brooklyn's most prominent east-west corridors, connecting downtown Brooklyn to Queens and Long Island and traversing many neighborhoods of Brooklyn. As you can see from the photos of the project area, much of Atlantic Avenue and neighboring blocks are characterized by vacant or underutilized lots with open storage and parking, self-storage and warehouse-based uses, as well as many auto-oriented uses like gas stations or auto repair shops, and loft-style buildings that contain a mix of non-residential uses. A large portion of the area is zoned M11, which was put in place in 1961 and does not allow new housing, while also limiting the types of uses to industrial and commercial development at a relatively low FAR and a high parking requirement. Next slide. So at a fundamental level, AAMUP is a neighborhood plan with the goal of re-envisioning an industrially zoned area close to public transit and employment nodes to support a mixed-use neighborhood with housing, including substantial amounts of affordable housing and space for jobs. To break this down a little further, AAMUP is really driven by 4 key objectives. First, to support a vibrant mix of uses and allow for housing growth with permanently affordable housing. Second, to encourage moderate to high density mix of uses with active ground floor uses along corridors and allow for multiple floors of space for jobs. Third, to promote a walk to work neighborhood with a mix of industrial, commercial, and community facility uses. And fourth, to strengthen the streetscape along Atlantic Avenue, improve safety, and enhance the pedestrian experience. Next slide. Now, to share a little background on what's driving the goals of our planning work, we want to spend a few minutes on the citywide and local context. First, citywide, as we all know, we're in the midst of a severe housing crisis. The cost of housing is high across the board. We don't have enough available homes of all types, whether they're affordable or market rate. The quality of the existing housing that we do have is often deteriorating, and maintenance costs are further increasing. And then the amount of choices that we have for housing is also limited, especially in central Brooklyn and the neighborhoods surrounding AAMUP. Next slide. So within the community district surrounding AAMUP, there are a large percentage of households that are rent burdened, meaning that they're spending more than 30% of their monthly gross income on housing expenses, which is a strong indicator of the need for more affordable housing and more housing in general. Next slide. As demand for housing and living in central Brooklyn has grown tremendously over the past few decades, as you can see in the chart and the change in population, the area within a quarter mile of AAMUP has experienced major population demographic changes, including a decrease in the population of Black residents, which has been coupled with an increase in the white population, as well as other groups such as Asian, Hispanic, and mixed race groups. Next slide. Many of AAMUP's neighborhood planning goals are guided by citywide plans and initiatives, including the mayor's housing blueprint released last year and a citywide zoning text amendment called City of Yes for Housing Opportunity, which aims to create a little more housing of all types across the city. Next slide. So now turning our attention to a borough-wide planning lens, the department regards AAMUP as part of a network of walkable, transit-rich areas, including access to both the subway and the Long Island Railroad, which are also a short ride away from major employment hubs in downtown Brooklyn and lower Manhattan. Next slide. Almost the entire area surrounding AAMUP has been subject to contextual area-wide rezonings over the last few decades, which have, though largely preserved the neighborhood character, they've also limited the ability to grow new housing, with the exception of a few key locations and corridors. Next slide. And in addition to these area-wide rezonings, the historic districts within the area have added to these constraints, particularly the ability to accommodate new housing. Next slide. And as noted earlier, the land uses within the AAMUP area are predominantly either a mix of vacant, parking, different types of light and industrial and warehouse-based uses, which stand in stark contrast to the uses within the areas around AAMUP, which are largely residential and commercial. And in particular, we would call attention to the areas colored in light pink or either gray or black, which denote different types of uses that produce less jobs, either they're open parking or vacant or other types of warehouse-based uses. Next slide. So among the major driving forces for why we're planning for AAMUP, one of the most important, if not the most important, is we're seeking to develop a holistic plan that builds upon the nearly decade of planning work led by Brooklyn's Community Board 8, which included several resolutions and recommendations to re-envision the neighborhood. Next slide. And with a similar theme, in addition to that planning work, AAMUP seeks to develop a holistic plan that brings together many of the recently approved private rezoning applications, both in the area and also directly within a block or two of the area, as well as consider the development that's ongoing throughout the neighborhood, most prominently at Pacific Park, a multi-phase redevelopment project located to the west and led by the Empire State Development Corporation. Next slide. So to put a finer point on the history of our work here and where we are in the process, a lot of the planning, as I mentioned, began following the contextual rezoning of Crown Heights West in 2013 and the subsequent formation of the M-Crown Land Use Committee by Community Board 8. In 2015, the board issued a resolution to rezone the area, which was followed by an engagement period with DCP and the release of a land use framework in 2018 to both help guide private rezoning applications and also help build consensus for future planning work. Following that engagement and additional calls for a neighborhood-wide plan over the coming years, council members Crystal Hudson, Shiose, along with several elected officials and local stakeholders, submitted a formal request for the administration to advance a plan in early 2022. And then in April of 2022, the city responded with a formal agreement to begin undertaking that process and developing a plan. In the spring of this past year, the department partnered with Councilmember Hudson and a consultant to host a series of public outreach meetings, which included a total of 9 working group meetings based on 3 topic areas and 3 community planning workshops, in addition to 9 steering committee meetings, which were comprised of leaders from local community boards and other stakeholders. This past August, we're really excited to release a community vision and priorities report that captures all of the outreach process and the priorities and recommendations. And in early September, we held a virtual presentation to share a draft zoning framework and are currently fleshing out the next phase of outreach over the next few months with the goal of certifying an application or entering public review in the spring of 2024. Next slide. And just to give a little more background on the key priorities mentioned in the community vision report, first and foremost, there was a top priority of creating new permanently deep affordable housing that increases the density along Atlantic Avenue and side streets, while also serving to preserve affordable housing within the larger area. Second, there was a shared goal around instituting zoning that supports a mixed-use community. So not just housing, but also promotes and serves access to jobs and services that are within walking distance. Third, there was a goal around a coordinated street plan with a primary goal around a comprehensive redesign of Atlantic Avenue that improves safety, provides and strengthens amenities, and also addresses environmental concerns. Fourth, there was a goal to increase public open space, either through the creation of new green space or recreation opportunities, or by improving existing parks within the surrounding area. Fifth, there was a goal around job training and business development to expand career pathways that are accessible to residents within the area, especially those without a college degree and lack the skills, or prioritizing Black-owned and MWBE businesses that pay a living wage and can help people thrive as new development comes online. And then lastly, there is a city-owned lot housed by the Bedford Atlantic Armory, which came up as an opportunity for better utilizing that space, which is currently a homeless shelter, but has opportunities to be renovated and serve other types of community benefits. So that concludes the background portion of the presentation. I will now go to the next slide, and I will turn it over to Jesse to cover the land use and zoning portion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jonah. And as a response to the outcome of the community vision and priorities report that Jonah was just speaking to, a revision of the 2018 framework was necessary. And so you'll notice the 5 colors on this diagram represents different sub areas running along Atlantic Avenue. The area in red is identified as the Atlantic Avenue mixed use sub area, where we believe and heard from workshops that given its wide major corridor, it should have the highest density of commercial and residential uses with ground floor activation. The yellow and purple striped kind of hatched area in the middle there between Grand and Franklin is a direct response actually to the previous framework that was prohibiting the development of housing here. So this updated framework suggests a transitional area into a special mixed use area to allow and incentivize a variety of uses, and not just a focus on commercial and industrial uses, but to allow residential as well. Basically, we should not be restricting residential uses anywhere. In the darker yellow, the north-south avenues will focus on moderate density with mixed-use developments, while in the lighter yellow, this will be a residential-only sub-area to facilitate new infill housing opportunities. Lastly, the purple area, identified around the Armory, is to maintain compliance and provide flexibility for future potential renovations. You can read more about the responses to this framework and the thinking behind it in the Community Vision and Priorities report. and the draft zoning presentation from last month. Both are available on the New York City Department of City Planning website. Next slide. We call this the affected area, which is an area where at least one or more land use actions will be proposed. This area is an approximate 20-block area in the Northwest Crown Heights and Southern Bedford Stuyvesant neighborhoods of Brooklyn Community Districts 3 and 8. The project area is generally bounded by Vanderbilt Avenue to the west, Nostrand Avenue to the east, Herkimer Street to the north, and Bergen Street to the south, covering an existing M11 zoning district. In addition, a non-contiguous area located on a portion of 2 blocks in Prospect Heights, where 2 sites owned by the city are also in the affected area. Extending the entire length of the affected area, Atlantic Avenue is a prominent east and west corridor, and other secondary corridors running north and south within the affected area are Vanderbilt Avenue, Grand Avenue, Classen Avenue, Franklin Avenue, and Nostrand Avenue. Next slide. The purpose and need for the proposed land use actions would support the community-based goals of re-envisioning an industrially zoned area to spur the growth of jobs and housing in a walkable, transit-rich area, driven by approximately 10 years of outreach and engagement with the local community boards, elected officials, and various stakeholders, all building upon the past M-Crown planning efforts and the 2023 AAMUP Community Vision and Priorities Report, all of which Jonah had mentioned before. Additional needs include updating the current M11 industrial zoning to reflect the current vision and goals of the surrounding neighborhoods, encouraging a mix of uses that allow for housing growth, active ground floors, job-generating uses, and permanently affordable housing. Lastly, strengthening the quality of the Atlantic Avenue streetscape for all and additional users, stormwater and ecological improvements, and safety concerns. Next slide. The set of land use actions proposed consists of a zoning map amendment to rezone the approximate existing zoning districts to better accommodate the land use objectives. For example, the existing zoning district M11 does not allow the creation of new housing. The other zoning map amendment is to map a special Atlantic Avenue mixed use district, largely coterminous with the rezoning area, which I will go into more detail about in future slides. Accompanying those is a zoning text amendment to modify Appendix F for the purpose of establishing the area as a mandatory inclusionary housing area, basically applying an MIH program to require a share of the new buildings to be permanently affordable, where significant new housing capacity would be created. Other land use actions include the designation of an urban development action area, project approval of an urban development action area project, and the acquisition and or disposition of the city-owned property within the project area. For example, there are 2 parcels owned and managed by the New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development, also known as HPD, that were subject of an RFP and community visioning process where one of the sites the city is seeking to rezone and designate to facilitate 100% affordable housing development for older adults and families, as well as provide on-site services and amenities for residents and other community facility uses. The last action as part of the proposal is a site selection and or acquisitions action, which is related to the potential acquisition of land by the city for the purpose of establishing publicly accessible open space. Next slide. This is a map of the proposed draft zoning. The affected area will be rezoned from the existing zoning where housing was prohibited to allow to the following districts to better meet the goals of the proposal. For example, proposing a higher density along Atlantic Avenue in the red, the C638 district will allow a residential floor area ratio, or FAR, of 9, a non-residential FAR of 7.5, with a maximum base height of 135 feet or 13 stories, and restricting the overall building height at 185 feet or 18 stories, which you can see in the red. Looking to the north of Atlantic Avenue, we're proposing a set of districts that are more kind of the transitional height districts, like the C43A, C45D, and R6B, which is to respond to the existing context to the north towards Bed-Stuy. These districts have maximum building heights that range from 65 to 125 feet, or 6 to 12 stories, depending if the building is used for housing or job generating uses. Also looking to pair districts like M14 and R6A, which are in the orange, to incentivize and allow mixed-use developments and flexible envelopes to allow unique, interesting architecture, while also restricting buildings to 125 feet, which can result in buildings 8 to 12 stories, depending on if it's used for housing or job-centered uses as well. Next slide. In addition to the rezoning area, a special district is being proposed, coterminous to the rezoning area for several reasons. The first one, to promote the growth of housing and employment centers around transit and foster an adequate range of services and amenities for residents, workers, and visitors. Second, to ensure a lively and attractive streetscape along Atlantic Avenue and other major corridors. And third, to support a mix of residential, commercial, community facility, and light industrial uses. And so to achieve this, a series of modifications to the underlying zoning will be proposed. For example, setting back buildings along Atlantic Avenue to improve sidewalk conditions, or providing bulk envelope flexibility within the zoning envelope to allow for interesting architecture while also enhancing facade and articulation treatment measures. Additionally, the special district will mandate non-residential uses like grocery stores, daycares, or places of employment on the ground floor along major corridors to activate the sidewalk, and then in strategic locations to incentivize non-residential uses, with residential above to continue incentivizing mixed-use buildings. Lastly, to name a few, we also are proposing to reduce parking and reduce curb cut requirements within this area as well. Next slide. That concludes the portion from the Department of City Planning, the Brooklyn office, on the proposed project overview of AAMUP. Thank you so much, and I appreciate you all for following along so far. I'm gonna now pass the virtual mic over to our environmental consultant, Jonathan Carey at WSP, who will give an overview of the draft scope of work. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. Hi, everyone. I'm Jonathan Carey from WSP. And WSP is leading a consultant team to assist the city with the City Environmental Quality Review. A CEQR is a disclosure process by which decision makers evaluate potential environmental consequences before they approve discretionary actions. The disclosure is also to the public and other agencies. And the discretionary actions are, as Jesse listed earlier, so that's a zoning map amendment, zoning text amendment, and other actions. Under CEQR, the City Planning Department will compare the no action condition with the future with action condition through their developed reasonable worst case development scenario. That reasonable worst case development scenario analyzes the incremental changes that could be reasonably expected to occur if those actions are adopted. So the public comments that you provide today, as well as written comments received by City Planning, will be incorporated into the final scope of work. And then a draft environmental impact statement will be prepared in accordance with that final scope of work and published for public review. Another public hearing will be held on the draft environmental impact statement, and comments received during that hearing, as well as written comments received during that public review period, will be incorporated into the final environmental impact statement. Next slide, please. So this project has a build year of 2034, and that is part of the analysis framework for the reasonable worst case. And it compares the no action and with action condition. So under the no action condition, you can generally think of continuation of existing conditions over the next 10 years and what would be likely to occur in the project area over those next 10 years. Under the with action condition, there's new uses that would be built at higher densities, including residential and retail and community facility uses, and in some industrial uses would remain. The Department of City Planning has identified 51 projected development sites where development is expected to occur within that 10-year period, as well as 16 potential development sites where development is not expected to occur, but they are analyzed for their site-specific environmental impacts. So the criteria by which the Department of City Planning selected each of these sites is detailed in the draft scope of work. Next slide, please. So this is the reasonable worst case development scenario in the year 2034. This table breaks down the uses under the no action condition in 2034, the with action condition in 2034, and the increment between them. As noted, there's an increase in residential uses as well as most commercial uses. However, there's a decrease in automotive related uses. In general, there's a decrease in industrial uses, although some do remain. And there are increases in both medical office and other community facility uses. The redevelopment will occupy spaces that are occupied by existing parking lots. Therefore, parking spaces will decrease under the with action condition. And this redevelopment will result in almost 10,000 new residents and almost 3,000 new workers in the project area. Next slide, please. So the draft scope of work describes the Department of City Planning's approach to analyzing the proposed project according to all of these technical areas. These include site-specific technical topics such as historic and cultural resources and hazardous materials, as well as density-related topics such as transportation, air quality, and noise. The environmental impact statement will address all of these topics, as well as include other chapters. Specifically, there will be a mitigation chapter. So if any significant environmental impacts are identified in any of the chapters on the left, mitigation will be identified to the extent practical to reduce or eliminate those impacts. In addition, the Department of City Planning will analyze alternatives, including both a no action alternative and a no unmitigated impact alternative, which is generally a smaller version of the proposed rezoning. Finally, the EIS will include the summary chapters listed there. Unavoidable adverse impacts are those that cannot be mitigated, and no mitigation could be identified that would fully mitigate those impacts, as well as secondary growth-reducing impacts and any other irretrievable or irreversible commitment of resources. I will note that natural resources are not included or not proposed to be included in the environmental impact statement, given the fully built out nature of the project area. Next slide, please. You can access the environmental assessment statement and draft scope of work at this link, as well as in the other information that Department of City Planning has provided. I'll now turn it back over to EARD to complete the presentation.
Thank you, Jonathan and Jonah and Jesse for the presentation. We will now move on to part 2 of the meeting, where we will receive testimony from elected officials, community board leaders, and government agencies. When it is your turn to speak, your name will be called and you'll be promoted to panelist, which will allow you to unmute your microphone and the ability to turn on your camera if you wish. There will be a period where it appears that you're no longer in the meeting, but you will automatically rejoin the Zoom as a panelist. If anyone experiences technical issues that prevent you from sharing your testimony, we're going to pause, move to our next speaker to allow for troubleshooting to happen in the background. Please note we also do have how-to guides on the New York City Engage website for assistance, as well as you can dial in our helpline information shown here. So that's at the bottom of the screen. This meeting ID will link you to someone who can help you troubleshoot if you're having any technical difficulties. All right, so we will start with our registered speakers, our elected officials, government agencies, and community board representatives, the first of which is Councilmember Crystal Hudson. So Councilmember Crystal Hudson, we will not see you in the Zoom, but I know you are joining shortly. So while we wait for Councilmember Hudson to join, we will move to our next elected official who is registered to speak, which is Councilmember Chi Osei. So Councilmember Osei, we will hear your testimony. You'll be promoted to panelist and given the opportunity to share your testimony.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, welcome.
Oh, thank you very much. So thank you again for having me here to testify. My name is Councilmember Chi Osei, and I represent the 36th District in Brooklyn, which includes the neighborhoods of Bed-Stuy and Crown Heights. I'm here today to provide comments on the draft scope of work for the environmental impact study for the Atlantic Avenue mixed-use plan, the eastern portion of which is in my district. I will also address community priorities outside of the zoning proposal that must be addressed for this plan to succeed. I am grateful for the work of the Department of City Planning, WXY, and the AAMUP Steering Committee, and hundreds of community members who have contributed countless hours in recent months to develop the community vision and priorities report, released in August of this year. We're also indebted to the years of community advocacy and planning led by CB8, which laid the groundwork for a strong planning process. While the draft zoning and DSOW address a majority of the needs and goals of the community, and I agree that there are still concerns that exist within this draft. Because Councilmember Hudson is going to bring many of these concerns to you, I will mainly focus on issues that concern District 36 constituents. First, the rezoning plan must prioritize and maximize deeply affordable housing. Similar to District 35, District 36 is seeing a mass exodus of Black residents due to rising rents and lack of affordable housing. Therefore, the AAMUP rezoning must facilitate significant investments in deeply affordable housing in District 36 through both new development and preservation of existing affordable units in our area. Councilmember Hudson and I are aligned our position that additional public sites for 100% affordable development must be secured for this rezoning to advance. We urge DCP to ensure that additional density on the following publicly owned District 36 sites is studied and in scope in the EIS. 1024 Fulton Street, which is currently a state-owned property, will be in Councilmember Hudson's district in 2024. 178 Brooklyn Avenue, which is a Department of Education building, as well as 457 Nostrand Avenue, which is another DOE building. These sites hold the greatest potential to increase affordability in my district, and DCP must work closely with DOE and other agencies to make use of this opportunity. Deeply affordable housing is essential to ensure that longtime residents are able to remain in their communities. We also urge DCP to work with HPD to maximize affordable units and potential private developments. The agency should prioritize term sheet development on large private sites where owners are amenable. We have discussed the need for an HPD term sheet to facilitate 50% affordable housing and private developments and continue to support HPD's efforts towards making that available. Finally, I strongly support deepening the affordability levels required through MIH, or mandatory inclusionary housing. Speaker Adams has called for MIH to be revised as part of the mayor's zoning for housing opportunity text amendment to allow for the deep affordability option to be required through zoning. If this is achieved through the citywide text amendment, we must ensure that it applies to AAMUP, even if AAMUP is on a slightly faster timeline. Second, consider reducing density along the eastern portion of Atlantic Avenue. As Councilmember Hudson expressed in her letter, and as residents have consistently expressed, the density in the eastern part of Atlantic Avenue may be higher than what is appropriate for this stretch. Generally, the density on Atlantic Avenue and surrounding streets tapers down from its height at the Pacific Park development as one moves eastward into District 36. At present, the areas around the eastern portion of the proposed Atlantic Avenue zoning are mainly zoned at R6A, 6 to 8 stories, and R6B, 4 to 5 stories. I'm concerned about the stark contrast between the density and the proposed C6-3A zoning for Atlantic Avenue, which would allow buildings up to 18 stories. We must ensure an appropriate transition from higher density along Atlantic Avenue to the surrounding residential areas. Third, the city must work creatively to identify new opportunities for open space and commit to additional investments. The Franklin Avenue station is in District 36 and is frequented by residents and visitors of both districts. This is the MTA station. We ask that DCP work with the MTA to improve the station area as a public amenity and commit resources to specified improvements, as well additional sanitation services, which are sorely needed. The EIS should assess all opportunities to increase public open space in the study area, including design and capital improvements at the John Hancock Playground. The city should commit funding to implement these improvements in conjunction with this rezoning. Finally, and I promise finally, the EIS should include a comprehensive study of access to healthcare in our community. The draft scope does not call for any analysis of access to healthcare, either hospitals in acute care or primary care, reflecting a shortcoming of the current CEQR manual. With over 4,000 projected housing units added to the area, this action should be considered an introduction of a sizable new neighborhood and include analysis of impacts on healthcare services and infrastructure. The perennial underfunded and overburdened Interfaith Medical Center is the closest hospital to the area, and access to hospital and trauma care should be examined as part of the EIS. Councilmember Hudson and I will submit our complete scoping comments in writing with detailed feedback on the draft scope of work. We look forward to continuing to work with DCP and the Adams administration to address these concerns and develop the strongest possible application in advance of ULURP. I look forward to hearing from you in your office soon, and I look forward to partnership. Sorry if I went over time.
Councilmember, you are not time limited, so no way to go over. Thank you very much for your comments and for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. I do see that Councilmember Hudson has joined the meeting. Thank you for being here. So our next speaker will be Councilmember Crystal Hudson. We will promote you to a panelist, and it will be your opportunity to provide your testimony.
Hi there. Good afternoon. Thank you so much. Sorry, I'm just getting it together. Okay. My name is Crystal Hudson. I'm the council member for District 35 in Brooklyn, which encompasses the majority of the Atlantic Avenue mixed use plan area. I'm joined here today by my colleague, Councilmember Chi Osei, who represents the remainder of the planning area in District 36, whom you've just heard from. Each of our districts is unique, but our communities share history, challenges, and priorities that must be reflected in this plan. This milestone represents the culmination of years of community advocacy to transform the landscape of Atlantic Avenue and surrounding blocks from vacant lots, self-storage, and gas stations to a vibrant mixed-use neighborhood with deeply affordable housing. The proposal reflects many of the priorities expressed during the community planning process, especially the key goal of building more housing, including more deeply affordable housing for residents at greatest risk of displacement. But there's still much progress needed to develop a plan that meets our community's needs and achieves its goals. In short, we must, 1, ensure the EIS reflects the full scope of the community vision as articulated in the engagement report. 2, continue public engagement on the draft zoning. And 3, secure the necessary infrastructure and neighborhood investments for further deeply affordable housing, increased investments in the area's local economy, and safer streets. First, AAMUP must significantly increase our community's supply of deeply affordable housing beyond mandatory inclusionary housing or MIH requirements, both through new construction and strengthened preservation investments. The displacement of Black families in central Brooklyn is well documented, with the Black population within the AAMUP study area dropping by half over the past 2 decades due to rising housing costs, predatory real estate practices, and race-based income inequality. AAMUP cannot reinforce this trend. We must ensure new housing generated by this rezoning is accessible to Black households, many of which have called this area home for generations. The proposed zoning and text amendments are insufficient, and additional commitments for 100% affordable housing development are necessary. To that end, we urge all relevant city agencies to commit additional public sites for 100% affordable housing development. We have identified 3 underutilized Department of Education facilities within half a mile of the AAMUP study area that must be included in the draft zoning for study in the EIS. 178 Brooklyn Avenue, 457 Nostrand Avenue, large parking lot in the rear of the DOE facility, and 510 Claremont Avenue. Similarly, we urge DCP and the administration to work with our state and federal partners to secure additional state-owned sites that could be utilized for affordable development. Additionally, I support the speaker's call for revision of MIH to require deeper affordability as a part of the upcoming Zoning for Housing Opportunity text amendment. I call on DCP to ensure that, should that occur, actively. Second, while the proposed C63A zoning for Atlantic Avenue aligns with many of AAMUP's goals, there's stronger precedent for this level of density on the western portion of the rezoning area. Many community members have expressed a desire for lower heights on the eastern side of the project area to ensure an appropriate transition to adjacent lower density residential areas. As we move forward with public review, we should thoughtfully consider these trade-offs. Third, we must strengthen mixed-use zoning incentives for light industrial, arts, and community facility uses. One of AAMUP's primary goals is to ensure a, quote, diverse and vibrant mix of uses, including space for jobs, services, local retail like grocery stores, community facilities, creative and cultural uses, and light industrial businesses, end quote. Unlike the nearby Special Gowanus mixed-use district, AAMUP currently lacks tools to achieve this. While modifying all or part of special mixed-use incentive to more narrowly target the aforementioned uses would appear to be in scope, DCP should ensure and confirm it is. DCP must also confirm it would be in scope to add a provision to the special district to preserve existing significant commercial industrial properties such as GMDC and 1000 Dean from converting to residential. Councilmember Osei and I will submit our detailed comments on the draft scope of work in writing. It is essential that the EIS facilitates the best possible outcome for this plan, and we will collaborate with DCP to ensure that our comments are integrated in a timely and thorough manner. However, I'd like to reiterate that this zoning plan cannot advance without substantial commitments from DCP's sister agencies and this administration. One, a comprehensive redesign of the Atlantic Avenue corridor consistent with the community vision and priorities report that is advanced ahead of the council vote on the rezoning, including an implementation timeline. And two, a package of locally targeted policies, including job training and placement to expand career pathways that are accessible to existing residents without a college degree, support for MWBE and Black entrepreneurship, and potential financial incentives for diverse mixed-use development. I look forward to continuing to work with DCP on securing these comprehensive investments for equitable growth that fulfills the community's vision for a new Atlantic Avenue. Thank you so much for allowing me to provide my testimony today.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Hudson, for being here and providing your detailed comments. And we look forward to both council members' written testimony so that we'll provide full responses. Thank you very much for being here. We will now move to folks that registered to speak on behalf of government agencies or local community boards, of which there is only one registered speaker, Karen Gray, on behalf of Brooklyn Community Board 8. We are not seeing Karen Gray in the Zoom room at the moment. If you are joining in the YouTube, please switch over to Zoom via the login link. At this point, we will move to our members of the general public, part 3 of the public scoping meeting, where we will ask members of the general public to speak for up to 3 minutes. As you saw, the time tracker will display when you start your testimony. So we'll move to that slide now. Again, just as a reminder, when your name is called, you'll be promoted to panelist and given the ability to unmute your microphone and turn on your camera. There will be a short period that it appears that you're no longer in the meeting, but you will automatically rejoin as a panelist. When your 3 minutes have expired, you'll be asked to conclude your remarks. And if anyone, again, experiences technical issues, we'll move on to our next speaker. But note that so that if you do resolve the technical issues, that we'll be able to hear your testimony. All right, so we are moving to our speakers. Our first speaker in this group will be Cassandra Smith, to be followed by Nicole Lamley, to be followed by Mimi Mitchell. Cassandra Smith, who is our first speaker in this group, we are not seeing in the Zoom here. But we do see someone else associated with the facility, the same facility as Cassandra Smith, Brenda Lau. So you have your hi, are you speaking on behalf of Cassandra Smith?
Yes, sorry. This is Cassandra.
Oh, okay.
I'm using Brenda's computer.
All right, we will promote you to a panelist. at the moment so that we're able to give you the ability to turn on your camera if you wish. If we could
Thank
go
you.
ahead and promote the speaker listed here as Brenda Lau, but who is Cassandra Smith, to a panelist.
Oh, one more.
Hi, welcome.
Okay, sorry.
No problem.
So thank you. My name is Cassandra Smith. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'm the Senior Project Manager of the Greenpoint Manufacturing and Design Center. We are a nonprofit developer of affordable manufacturing space for small businesses. We've developed over 700,000 square feet of space in New York City. We own and manage 6 buildings, which are now home to over 125 businesses and 700 manufacturing jobs. We have a 7th building currently being built in Brownsville. That project is a mixed-use manufacturing and affordable and supportive housing in the same building, the first of its kind in New York City. So GMDC owns 1102 Atlantic Avenue, which goes block through to 1093 Pacific Street between Franklin and Classen. We purchased and renovated the property in 2013, 2014. Previously a dilapidated warehouse where a total of 4 people worked. The property is now home to 8 small manufacturing businesses with 64 workers between them. The jobs that these businesses provide are good quality jobs that pay a living wage of over $50,000 average annually. And that number is an average of 20 to 30,000 more than retail and food service jobs. We also know that our building is a good light industrial neighbor. We think that our tenants operate their businesses in a way that is comparatively clean and quiet, and our off-street loading dock on the Pacific Street side keeps the sidewalk and the street clear. GMDC's building, along with the MTA site next door, is currently planned to be designated as a MX special district, M15 R9A. And we agree that this is the appropriate designation to promote the possibility of a mixed-use manufacturing and residential building on the same lot at the MTA location, with the density on Atlantic Avenue that steps down to an appropriate density on Pacific Street. We'd like to ask that consideration be given to include an MX designation for the rest of the Atlantic Avenue frontage of the block where our building is located, between Franklin and Classen, or that the currently proposed C63A district be modified by the special district text to allow manufacturing uses on that block as well. Again, this is for the frontage on Atlantic Avenue, as the Pacific Street side already has an MX designation planned for it. So doing so would increase the possibility in the future of a mixed-use project on that block, perhaps opening the door for GMDC to partner with property owners and other developers to create more mixed-use buildings while also not reducing the residential FAR possibilities in that area.
Thank you. Your time is up. If you could just conclude your remarks, and if you could unmute Cassandra just for her last sentence.
Sorry. So I just want to note our current mixed-use project that's underway in Brownsville will result in 40,000 square feet of manufacturing space and 174 units of affordable and supportive housing for that community. And that's the type of project that we would seek to have in Crown Heights. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And we welcome your written testimony if you're planning to submit that as well. We'll also correct the record so that your name is reflected in our records. Thank you. Our next speaker is Nicole Lamley, and sorry if I'm mispronouncing anyone's name, to be followed by Mimi Mitchell, to be followed by Edwin Alvarez. Nicole Lamley, you are our next speaker. You'll be promoted to panelist in just a moment.
Hello.
Hi, welcome.
This is actually Jack Robinson, Nicole Lemla's husband. I'm on her Zoom. So our main concern is definitely affordability. I don't know. I know it's been it's been considered a lot in this presentation, but I don't think that it's gone far enough. And I think Chiose and his idea of more thought about hospitals and healthcare as this neighborhood grows and grows older. And that's about all I have to say. Affordability is my main point.
Okay, thank you for your comments. If you could send your contact information to our distribution list so that we can get your name correct in our records, that would be great. Thank you. Our next speaker is Mimi Mitchell, to be followed by Edwin Alvarez, to be followed by Rosie Alvarez. Mimi Mitchell is our next speaker. Will be promoted to panelist and invited to speak in just a moment.
Good afternoon.
Hi, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name is Mimi Mitchell. I am a member of Community Board 8, which is one of the direct areas affected by this. And I am also a member of Crown Heights Tenant Union. I couldn't agree more than with what Mr. Osei had to say. We participated, and I participated in every single AMP Up presentation in regards to the land use issues. What came out of that was a call for deep affordable housing, not what we call affordable housing now, but deeper affordable housing. And that would mean housing that would be under 50% AMI limits. That is something that I heard at every table. And the other thing that I heard was about the mandatory inclusion housing and how that breakdown, the options that have been presented are just not enough, and they are just not doing enough for our community. What we were hoping to see after all of this time and after all of this research is that there would be a commitment to a change to making affordable housing more accessible and to possibly even changing the MIH. I think that this is a really unique opportunity that we have here with AAMUP, and I think it's a unique opportunity to sort of set a precedent going forward as to what we can do and how we can really take care of a community and how a community can come together to actually make it affordable for the people who work here to actually be able to live here. I think it's really sad that the people who work jobs in here, whether it's your cashier, your waiter, your barista, etc., they cannot afford to live in this neighborhood. And I would urge AMP Up to actually take this opportunity to set a precedent and to really show us what deeply affordable housing can do and how it can work. We've crunched the numbers. It's all possible. So for DCP not to do it, I think you'd be sending a really big message and the wrong message. So I'm hoping that I, along with many others, are hoping that you can make your commitment to deeply affordable housing more than just a talking point, but an actual physical statement in the way that this neighborhood is going to be shaped. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for being here and for your testimony and your participation in the planning process. Our next speaker will be Edwin Alvarez, to be followed by Rosie Alvarez, to be followed by Elizabeth Dennis. And just to note, all the comments received today will be summarized and responded to in our final scope of work, as was mentioned by our environmental consultant after the department has had a chance to digest and understand all of the comments heard today. Edwin Alvarez, you are our next speaker.
Hello.
Hi, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for receiving me. Thank you for the time. My name is Edwin Alvarez. I live on 546 Franklin Avenue, around the corner of Atlantic Avenue on the north side, 3 doors down from the proposed upzoning. My neighbors on Lefferts, Briefer Place, and Briefer Place attended the AAMUP meetings, and I want to express my concerns as well as theirs about the upzoning. We're against the high density buildings in our immediate area, right? My neighbors and I don't want to live under the shadows of tall buildings or let the neighborhood feel like we're living on the bottom of a canyon. We're talking about 25, 20, maybe even 15 stories. South side of Atlantic has 3 or 4 blocks of deep industrial land, right? I cannot see why this area was not taken into account to be upzoned into higher density. Developers ignore the concerns from us, the homeowners. To date, my neighbors at Lefferts Place are still having issues with the developer at 1045 Atlantic. I'm not against development either. I understand the need for growth and housing. For example, I can back up a project like Chestnut Commons on Cypress Hills, which is 100% affordable. I asked all the decision makers to please reconsider your plans to upzone the north portion of Atlantic Avenue from Classen to maybe Nostrand or even at least to Bedford Avenue. I would like to invite council members Osei and Hudson and a city planner to our next community meeting at Lefferts Place. My number is 929-351-1673. Again, we're not against development, right? As long as it's reasonable and it doesn't, it's going to impact our area a lot. Parking is very difficult. Residents still have cars. It's safer than the trains. If we're going to bring a lot of influx of residents, our area is going to need friendlier parking rules and more amenities. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony and for being here today. Thank you, Edwin. Our next speaker is Rosie Alvarez, to be followed by Elizabeth Dennis, to be followed by Daryl Nathan. Rosie Alvarez, you are our next speaker. You'll be promoted to panelist in just a moment.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for having me and having the other panelists here to share our thoughts and opinions. I just wanted to basically piggyback and add on to the last 2 speakers. I think one thing that has also slipped under the radar when it comes to development and like the 10-year perspective of thousands of residents moving in is the capacity of public transportation. In 2019, it was already very difficult to wait for the trains during peak hours to safely stand on the platforms. There are people on the edge of the platform because there just wasn't space. It was very difficult to get on a train and get to work on time because the trains would be packed. So like, and this is like outside of relying on congestion pricing, like considering that in the 10-year plan, there are thousands of people who are going to be moving in. That's also thousands of tax dollars. And there needs to be consideration into like public transport and just space on the trains, how often they run, safety, etc. As previous speakers mentioned, a lot of people do drive in the area, and a lot of people like don't work in the city, but still live in, like they work, you know, in Queens or Long Island or wherever. And they live in Bed-Stuy or they live in Crown Heights, et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, when trains aren't reliable, when buses aren't reliable, when those systems aren't safe, people drive. So I know like this is a public transport city, not against high-rise buildings, not against more housing, but if we're going to build higher density buildings, it very much needs to be deeply affordable, like 50% or more, but ideally more, if not the whole thing. And yeah, just honestly, just placing a big emphasis on train safety. As someone who was also just recently groped on the train, we just can't like we need safer ways of transporting, especially as the public population rises. There is also a homeless shelter that I think could use improved services. As the council members mentioned, there is a housing crisis, there's a homelessness crisis, and people need help. And it's not just about developing for market rate apartments, it's actually helping communities. So that's it for me, but thank you for the time.
Thank you very much for your comments and your testimony and for being here today. Thank you. Our next speaker is Elizabeth Dennis, to be followed by Daryl Nathan, to be followed by Seth Rosenblum. Elizabeth Dennis, you'll be our next speaker.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Dennis. I currently live just a neighborhood outside of this affected area in Flatbush. I live car-free there. And I also used to live in the affected area for the rezoning car-free. I think it's a great place to create new housing opportunities that have really, really good access to transit and jobs, both in Manhattan and in downtown Brooklyn, where there's been a huge amount of job growth. I'm also an Open New York member leader for the Mid-Brooklyn chapter. And I'm, really worried about myself, everyone, my friends, my former neighbors in the area being forced to leave because of the rapidly rising cost of living throughout the city, but especially in this specific zone. And I'm really excited about this plan and wanted to thank DCP, Councilmember Hudson, and everyone for leading this process. Above everything else, I really want to focus on the need for this plan to generate lots of new homes. We need to create as much mixed income homes as possible to allow for the deepest possible affordability levels. I heard that so many times talking to people generally, but also throughout the AAMUP process. There's been a huge call for deep affordability over the next decade if we want to curb the displacement that's been discussed. And hopefully create opportunities for people who have been displaced to come back to their homes. The proposed scope for AAMUP is a great start, but I'm worried that it's not aggressive enough to support the most housing possible, especially hearing a desire from some people to make the eastern end of this project have even lower density with how much the proposed with the cost of construction where it is, really high interest rates, no support from Albany. It's really hard to build new housing, especially the kind of mixed income homes we need with deeply affordable homes, both to help integrate neighborhoods, but also to make sure we're building those deeply affordable homes that we keep hearing we need. And we need to do everything we can to build this. And I think that a lot of the projects that have been approved recently on Atlantic Avenue and Pacific Street are going to allow for a denser development that gives even more homes and more deeply affordable homes than what's been proposed in this draft scope. And so I'm hoping that DCP will explore the strongest possible changes. Making dense housing is so important for all the issues we've already lined up and have been discussed at this meeting, but also as we're moving towards a future where climate change is more and more imminent and more affecting our ability to need to live together so that we can be sustainable. And I really hope that DCP will explore thinking about more density so that there can be even more mixed income projects that would support those deeply affordable homes. Thank you so much for the time to testify today.
Thank you. Perfect timing. And thank you for being here today and your participation. Our next speaker will be Daryl Nathan, to be followed by Seth Rosenblum, to be followed by Vishnu Reddy. Apologies. Daryl Nathan, you will be our next speaker. You'll be promoted to a panelist in just a moment and given the opportunity to share your testimony.
Yes, hello.
Hi, welcome.
Hi, welcome. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here. I'm just piggybacking off of Mr. Alvarez said about the high density buildings. I'm also a resident of Lefferts Place Block Association, the treasurer there, a 40-year resident from the block. And our main concern is just that is the high density buildings they want to put up around the corner from my house, where we already have issues with one of these buildings that's going up that's on Atlantic Avenue right now, where all these homeowners on that side of Atlantic Avenue are affected by these high density buildings. And so that's our main concern right now is putting up these other buildings up there, and the affordable housing, of course, that everybody's been speaking about. And that's pretty much it, and then our transportation system, to be able to handle all these other people coming into the location. And the higher the buildings are, the more people that's going to be there. So that's also a big concern. And that's pretty much it. So, pretty much Mr. Alvarez covered a lot of the stuff that I have to say, so I'm not going to be repetitious about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your testimony and for being here today. Our next speaker will be Seth Rosenblum, to be followed by Vishnu Reddy, to be followed by Thomas Huzij. So Seth Rosenblum will be our next speaker. You'll be promoted to panelist in just a moment and given the opportunity to provide your testimony.
Hi, my name is Seth Rosenblum. I'm a resident of Lefferts Place. I live directly adjacent to the AAMUP area, and I wanted to touch on transit capacity, specifically around the Franklin Avenue subway station. The C stop on Franklin Avenue is currently limited by only having one stairway on each side for entrance and egress, and that frequently leads to bottlenecks and lots of pedestrian traffic, as is. Much less without adding 10,000 new people to the neighborhood over the next 10 years. As a potential mitigation, in 2015, the MTA did like a comprehensive line review of the A and C subway lines. And one of their recommendations was to reopen the closed subway entrances that exist at Classen Avenue and Fulton Street. I wanted to, since that seems like an amazing mitigation for adding lots more people to the neighborhood, I wanted to urge DCP and the council members to work with the MTA and with the state to secure funding and potentially push forward on reopening those subway entrances to allow for all these new residents and visitors, possibly having the same effect that reopening the entrance on Bedford Avenue to the Nostrand station had just a few years ago. That's all. Thank you very much for your time.
Great. Thank you for being here and for that very specific recommendation. Our next speaker is Vishnu Reddy, to be followed by Thomas Huzij, to be followed by Alvaro Gonzalez. Vishnu Reddy, you're our next speaker. You'll be promoted to panelist in just a moment.
Hello.
Hi, welcome.
Hi, my name is Vishnu Reddy, and I'm a resident of Brooklyn and a member of Open New York. I'm excited about this plan and want to thank Councilmember Hudson and the Department of City Planning for their leadership on this process. I'm really concerned about our housing affordability crisis, which results from our severe shortage of homes. I would love to spend the rest of my life in Brooklyn, but I'm in my 20s and I'm very concerned that I'll not have a future in the city because of the unconscionable cost of living here. We need this plan to generate lots of new opportunities to create homes. The proposed scope is a good start, but I'm worried it's not enough to meet the moment we're in. I would like to see this rezoning create the most mixed income housing possible with the deepest possible affordability levels. The high cost of construction, difficult interest rate environment, and lack of help from Albany has made affordable housing construction difficult. I believe that we can allow for more denser development than what has been proposed, and I urge the DCP to consider changes to maximize the opportunities for new homes in the area. This is especially important in this difficult environment for new residential construction, and it would increase the likelihood of more deeply affordable homes being built. That's all my comments, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for your testimony. We will move on to our next speaker, which is Thomas Huzij, to be followed by Alvaro Gonzalez, to be followed by Toby Hyde.
Hello.
Hi, welcome.
Thank you. My name is Thomas Fuji, and I am a lifelong New Yorker and resident of Brooklyn Community District 2. I'm very optimistic about the outcomes we can achieve for our community with AAMUP, and I would like to thank Councilmember Hudson for engaging with DCP to envision a sustainable future for the neighborhood. I'm speaking for myself and my family today, but I also have the privilege of serving on Brooklyn Community Board 2. Our board hears from a diverse set of voices in the community, but they're all unified on the critical need to address the housing affordability crisis in Brooklyn. Every year, affordable housing tops the list of pressing issues facing the community district that we identify in our budget request process. We know that Community District 2 and the surrounding districts need to do everything in our power to create as much opportunity for new housing at all levels of affordability, especially at the deepest levels. We need to address the fundamental housing shortage that we've inherited so we can pass down a more affordable New York to our children and preserve the beautiful and diverse New York City that I had the privilege of growing up in. I believe the plan drafted by DCP is a positive start, but will not go far enough to incentivize the creation of the deepest levels of affordability for existing and new residents of the area. We need to create as much mixed income housing as we can, and the EIS should study what the highest level of density that is feasible for the area is. And additionally, the EIS should study and identify what levels of density would maximize the potential for construction of mixed income housing and create that deepest level of affordability. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony and for being here today. All right, our next set of speakers, Alvaro Gonzalez, to be followed by Toby Hyde, followed by Andre Parker. Alvaro Gonzalez, you are our next speaker.
How are you doing?
Hi, welcome.
Look, my name is Alvaro Gonzalez. I'm a local 79 organizer. I represent over 10,000 people, construction workers, 1,000 who live in the area, which is being affected right now by this rezoning. You know, as an organizer right now, I'm set up in the Gowanus area, where there's a lot of construction going on with no wage standards. So what that means is a lot of people working there are not making enough to, you know, survive in New York City. It's a city that, you know, it's the rising cost keeps going up and up and up, but the wages are not going up with it. So me as a representative of Local 79 and representing all these workers that live in the district, we want to make sure that $40 minimum an hour is attached to all this construction work that's going on and that will be going on in the rezoning, because it is important, because we always talk about, you know, what's going to happen 10, 20 years from now when people have to retire, when they become elderly. Are they going to have a good retirement? Are they going to have, you know, health benefits forever? Are they going to have, you know, enough savings in their accounts to keep living, you know? And the way I've seen what happened in Guanas, you know, none of this thing is going. Most of these workers are not going to have these, because, you know, if you're getting paid $20, $25 an hour, what are you really coming home with after you have to pay your taxes, after you have to pay healthcare, childcare, you know, rents are going up. There's not enough affordable housing in the area. That's what we're doing the rezoning, you know, to bring more affordable housing. But until it does, rents are still high rocketing, you know. There's more market rate apartments than affordable housing right now, and people just can't live off $20, $25 an hour. So it is imperative for our communities to be having access to jobs that are paying them a minimum of $40 an hour, you know. And we're not just talking, you know, letting contractors and developers say, hey, you know, my staff is getting over $40 an hour. No, the construction workers have to be making $40 an hour, because those are the people in this community that live in these communities that sometimes are being displaced. You know, they have to be making this money. Because anywhere they go, they have to be able to survive, you know. And $40 an hour minimum is that number to be able to live in New York City and stay in the neighborhoods that keep going up. That's it for today.
Thank you very much for your testimony and for being here today. Our next speaker is Toby Hyde, to be followed by Andre Parker, to be followed by Gib Viconi. Toby Hyde, you are our next speaker.
Good afternoon. This is Toby Hyde. Can you hear me?
Yes, welcome.
Great. Thank you. My name is Toby Hyde. I live in Crown Heights, immediately south of the AAMUP area, and happily and safely within the big circle of the affected area. And I'm an Open New York member. I've lived in Brooklyn for 4 years, in New York City for 25 of my 41 or so, maybe 30 years of my 41. I lost count. And I'm here today because I'm worried. I'm sick of my friends leaving this part of Brooklyn. I'm sick of my friends leaving the city and forced out because they can't afford to live here. I'm sick of seeing my friends have children and move to Westchester, move to Jersey City, move further afield because that's where they can afford housing. So I'm pretty excited about the Atlantic Avenue plan. I want to thank Councilmember Hudson and the Department of City Planning for leading this long process and getting us to this point. And again, I just want to emphasize, I want to see this plan develop as much housing as possible, given its existing footprint. And it needs to develop new housing opportunities for all kinds of people. The proposed scope is an outstanding start, but I think we can make it more aggressive to create the most housing possible in this area. We wanted to create the most mixed income housing, the deepest affordability levels over the next decade. There's a lot of new development in this neighborhood now. You walk down Classen Street, you walk down Grand, you walk down Pacific, and some of those buildings already seem, I think, are denser than the density allowed in the AAMUP plan, and that doesn't make any sense. So we're already falling behind, in a sense, the contextual zoning that is coming to the neighborhood. So that suggests to me that this area can support increased density. It's wonderful subway access. You can walk to the 2, the 3, the 4, the 5, the 6. Excuse me, not the 6. The C, the Q, all in like 10 minutes. Wonderful subway access. I hope the DCP will explore the strongest possible housing elements to this plan and keep the existing density rather than lower it or even increase the density across the plan. The discrepancy between mid-block and Avenue, I don't think is all that necessary, and it's just lowering the number of units in the plan. Emphasize again both and echo that both councilors call for increased streetscape safety just south of the plan area, and actually intersecting the plan. The city has reneged on some of its commitments to Underhill, so we do need those and other improvements to the area as well. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you. Thanks for your testimony and for being here today. Our next speaker is Andre Parker, who we are not seeing in the Zoom room. Andre Parker, if you are watching on the YouTube live stream, feel free to pop over to the Zoom. Not seeing Andre Parker, so we will go to our next speaker of Gib Viconi, to be followed by Andre Magnani. And then we'll continue on with our registered speakers. So Gib Viconi, you are our next speaker. We will promote you to panelist, and you'll have the opportunity to share your testimony.
Thanks very much for the opportunity to testify this afternoon. My name is Gib Viconi. For the last 9 years, I've worked with Community Board Age facilitating the MCrown process that has been mentioned earlier. However, today I'm just speaking for myself as a community member. I appreciate the kind words that were made about Community Board 8's actions over the last 9 years to get us to this point. I would say that the best way to demonstrate that appreciation is to include in the proposed zoning what is the cornerstone of the M-Crown plan, which is space set aside for light industrial, community facilities, and arts uses. The proposed zoning that we're discussing now has no such set aside. So virtually all of the non-residential space that will be created in the proposed buildings is going to be used for commercial, retail, and other uses that are not of the job creating character that is desired by the community board. So I would like to amplify the calls from council members Hudson and Osei to make sure a study of tailored uses is in scope for the EIS. I would also like to echo their call that more needs to be done in terms of developing deeply affordable housing. The proposed zoning includes MIH options 1, 2, and 3, but in that environment, basically all developers would choose option 2, which is not particularly affordable and certainly would not meet the needs of people in Community District 8 that are seeking affordable housing and are at risk of displacement today. There's a significant amount of residential density that's going to be added to the neighborhood as a function of this project, and the neighborhood is already underserved by open space in terms of the CEQR standards. So I would like the EIS to consider how to provide additional open space, including potentially temporary public open space through the use of programs like open streets. Finally, the proposed zoning also includes or would enshrine the C63X zoning for 840 Atlantic Avenue. That zoning was approved earlier in a private rezoning contingent on commitments from its applicants to develop deeply affordable housing under MIH option 3, to provide space for an arts organization, and to provide height and setback limits. All of those agreements were supposed to be enshrined in a CBA. That never happened. And so I do not believe that this zoning should basically let the developers off the hook by enshrining the C63X zoning there. Instead, that zoning should be C63A, like the rest of the frontage on Atlantic Avenue on that block. I see my time is almost up, so thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thanks for your testimony. And if you have other comments, of course, we welcome the written comments from anyone who spoke or did not have the opportunity to speak today. We will continue on with our speakers list with our next speaker, Andre Magnani, to be followed by Gino Murillo, to be followed by Ellen Liu Chan. Andre Magnani, you are our next speaker.
Hi, this is Gib again. Somebody is unmuting me, not Mr. Magnani.
Thank you. Have we promoted our next speaker? I am not seeing them in the room.
Maybe while you're waiting, I'll get in one more comment, which is that it's my that the zoning that's proposed can be future-proofed against other changes in MIH that potentially will make more deeply affordable housing possible. If that is in fact a change in MIH, this should incorporate
your time has concluded. Thanks. We'll go to our next speaker, Andre Magnani. It looks like you are unmuted if you're able to share your testimony.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes. Hi, welcome.
Sorry, I was kicked out while joining. Hi, everyone. I'm Andre Magnani. I'm a member of Open NYC, but I'm really here representing the interests of my family and specifically my 2-year-old daughter who I'm raising in Brooklyn, just 2 blocks from Atlantic Avenue. And my main concern for her, for my family, for my community around me, is that of affordability. And really, the way to drive that is to have ambitious projects, right? And I think AAMUP is a step in the right direction. It's a fantastic initiative, and I applaud everybody here for engaging in it. I wish it were more aggressive, right? I wish it were shooting for greater density, more housing, more and quicker approval of this project, because really that's the main concern of New Yorkers. Everyone I talk to is completely underwater in terms of like the amount of their budgets that they spend on rent. Ownership is a myth for my entire generation, and it's a dream that's out of reach for most. And really, the main culprit of that is the fact that New York has not kept up with the demands that our vibrant economy and our community generate for housing, right? So that's my only the request of everyone involved here, is that we be ambitious about the speed at which we approve these projects, that more projects like AAMUP get approved quickly through these processes, that we hopefully together set aside most of our differences in terms of the specific wishes that we want for things, but rather focus on the number of housing units that we're generating for New Yorkers, like myself, like my daughter, who I really wish is able to stay in her community when she grows up, that her friends are able to stay here, and that she doesn't have to join the millions of economic exiles that New York generates because of its high housing cost. So I really appreciate your time, and I'll yield back a few seconds.
Thank you. Thanks for your testimony and for being here today. All right, our next speaker is Gino Murillo, to be followed by Ellen Liu Chan, to be followed by Sarah Lazur. Gino Murillo, you will be our next speaker. We'll promote you to panelist in just a moment.
Hello.
Hi, welcome.
Hey, how you guys doing? My name is Gino Murillo. I'm a organizer with Local 79. I'm just here on behalf of all the members in that district. We would like to see this project be 100% union. Also, when you guys speak about affordable housing, to make it actually affordable housing. Local hiring is a real big plus. We want to see more people from the community working in the community and hopefully living in the community, stay living in the community. Another issue is we want to make sure that all workers on construction job sites in New York City are paid $40 an hour, including their benefits. I can't stress how important it is for construction workers to have benefits. We're in one of the most dangerous industries out there, and basically that's it. I just want to make sure this project is 100% union. Also that you guys do local hiring, and also let's all get on board with this Construction Justice Act, which includes the $40 an hour plus benefits for construction workers in New York City. That's pretty much it. Thank you, and hope to see the project go well.
Thank you. Thanks for your testimony and for being here. Our next speaker is Ellen Liu Chan, to be followed by Sarah Lazur, to be followed by our last registered speaker at the moment, Mark Faisal. Ellen, we will promote you to panelist in just a moment, and you'll be given the opportunity to share your testimony. For everyone who is considering wants to speak, please sign in on the registration page on NYC Engage at this time. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ellen Liu Chan. I am the asset manager at the Episcopal Diocese of Long Island. So I represent the Episcopal Diocese interests on behalf of St. Bartholomew's Church, which is a through law property that's on the edge of the MAP area. And before I jump in, I just want to say that we are very excited about this effort, and we've stood by through the previous iterations of this, and we're very eager and optimistic that this has the kind of ammunition behind it, the hype around it to really get through. Specifically on St. Bartholomew's, I mentioned that it's a through lot. It is also a landmarked property. Currently, in its current state, because it's landmarked, St. Bart's is more floor area than it can use in the northern portion of the lot. And under the rezoning, it'll have even more FAR. However, because it's already built in the landmarked, we can't use it. And the southern portion of our lot is in a different district. So using the adjusted floor area ratio, some of that excess floor area can be transferred to the southern portion, but because it's a contextual zoning district on the south side of the district boundary line, we're not able to use that excess floor area either. And it's the same issue transferring the excess floor area east or west. So we're faced with this issue where, you guys are doing all this work, but we can't actually manifest it into more housing. And so what we're asking is for you all to consider a simplification in the process of obtaining bulk waivers so that in that contextual district, those neighboring lots are able to use our landmark FAR. Just both into east and to the west so that we can really access and be able to create affordable housing projects. Since such waivers will be necessary to utilize the floor area, we're asking that the scope of the EIS to study the possibility of the transfers to lots 1 through 5 and lots 21 on our block. We're also suggesting a special provision in the AAMUP that would allow a waiver by certification for the landmark that will build housing similar to existing provisions in the 74-711, but as a certification. The alternative development scenarios that could be reviewed in the EIS for AAMUP would save the diocese a substantial amount of time and money and make it more accessible for us to be able to create that housing that we're all talking about here. And this could potentially serve as a model for future special purpose districts as well. And I'm done.
Right at the buzzer. Thank you. Thank you for providing that testimony and those recommendations. I think that would be very helpful to have in writing so that we can understand exactly what the recommendation is. But of course, we welcome all written comments. Our next speaker is Sarah Lazor, to be followed by Mark Faisal, to be followed by another registered speaker, Curtis Weatherford, who is now our last registered speaker. Sarah Lazor, you are our next speaker. We'll promote you to panelist and give you the opportunity to share your testimony.
Hi, good afternoon. Hi, my name is Sarah Lazar. I am a member of Crown Heights Tenant Union and a member of the Community Board 8. So if DCP approves a neighborhood rezoning under existing MIH, which is the framework in the report, you are putting a target on the backs of all the low and moderate income tenants in this neighborhood, both rent stabilized and unregulated. This area has already seen lots of MIH rezoning apps, and CHTU has seen an all-out assault on tenants in the vicinity. Landlords harassing and neglecting rent-stabilized tenants out with the goal of deregulating. And since 2019, they've continued, but with mass deregulation through substantial rehabilitation, demolition plans, and also a lot of fraudulent market rate leases. Unregulated tenants, of which there are more and more ever since Atlantic Yards in this particular area, they have no protection when the landlord wants a rent hike, and the landlord always cites the high rents nearby. I would recommend that these displacement factors be substantially studied for the environmental impact statement or study. And I also recommend that you study rent burdens in the area and arrears. And for example, I think it would be a good idea to requisition info from HRA, who processes all sorts of applications for people who are at risk of losing their housing, people who are in housing court, because tenants are hanging on by a thread. And I think a lot of our elected officials and the Department of City Planning would be astounded to see the rent burdens that tenants in this area are already dealing with. You know, how tenuous their future ability to pay their rent already is. And yeah, and just how much displacement risk they're facing. It's intense in this area. And when we were, you know, when tenants in this area were invited to participate in the AAMUP process, we were told this is the way that we get housing that we can all afford, you know, housing that that makes sense for you if you are actually potentially going to get pushed out of the neighborhood. This neighborhood has already, you know, the last census showed that 19,000 Black people have been pushed out of this neighborhood. And it's not, you know, just people choosing to leave. It's because people have been pushed out. And, you know, tenants of color are the people who face the most intense pressure from their landlords. And it's just something that we've observed. And there are ways to see it in statistics and data. I would urge the Department of City Planning to really dig into data that's going to show the true picture of displacement. And that's not always going to be obvious when you're, you know, just looking at average incomes, because as we know, the new buildings tend to be just affordable to people who don't currently live here. If you want to, you know, have this be a neighborhood where we are not getting pushed out, you need to build housing that we could potentially move into. So that's all that I have to say. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your recommendations and your testimony today. All right, our next speaker is Mark Faisal, to be followed by Curtis Weatherford. Mark Faisal, not seeing that person in our speakers list at the moment. Mark, if you are in the YouTube and interested in speaking still, please switch over to the Zoom. We will proceed with our next speaker, Curtis Weatherford. Curtis will promote you to panelist and you'll be given the opportunity to share your testimony.
Hi there. Thank you for hosting this event today. I just wanted to provide a quick testimony as a resident of this area just south of Atlantic Parkway. I walk through this area all the time. I'm also struggling with having to pay far more than 30% of my income on rent, and would love to see this area redeveloped into something that I could see myself walking around in, that I could be introduced to many new neighbors through. I'm totally in favor of the high density mixed use planning along Atlantic Avenue. And also very interested in some of the measures that have been proposed for redesigning that corridor specifically. I often find when I'm walking to and from the Nostrand stop on the AC train that that roadway feels very, very dangerous. There's cars moving very fast on it because it's just a canyon of warehouses and parking lots. There's no real reason for a driver to feel like they have to slow down. There's many times when I felt like unsafe trying to cross that road, and some of the new like traffic calming things proposed in this plan would be welcome and would make that area, I feel a lot safer and also a lot more vibrant and warm and welcoming. So would be very excited to see that happen, and very excited to see many more new housing units built in this neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your testimony and for being here today. That brings us to the end of our registered speakers list. So if anyone is watching on YouTube or any other way and wishes to speak at this time and you have not yet registered to speak, please register online now at this time on the webpage www.nyc.gov/NYC-engage. If we can go to the next slide, I believe we have a slide reiterating all of our sign-in protocols. Next slide. Perfect. So at this time, if you have not yet registered to speak, or if you had any technical difficulties that prevented you from speaking at this meeting, please at this time dial into one of these toll-free numbers and use the meeting ID and participant ID at the bottom of the screen for assistance, Or if you have not yet registered to speak and wish to, please go ahead and take the opportunity to visit the upcoming meetings page on nyc.gov/nycengage to register to speak to this meeting. We will now take approximately 5-minute break to give the opportunity for anyone to call in and register or register through NYC Engage before we close out the meeting. So we'll take a 5-minute break at this time and reconvene at 4 p.m. to hear from any new registered speakers. We'll see you all in a few minutes at 4 p.m. All right, good afternoon and welcome back. You are tuning into the remote public scoping meeting for the Atlantic Avenue Mixed Use Plan, or AAMUP. For the record, again, the project CEQR number or City Environmental Quality Review number is 24DCP019K. My name is Stephanie Shalou, the Director of the New York City Department of City Planning's Environmental Assessment and Review Division. We are currently on part 3 of the meeting, where members of the public are invited to speak for up to 3 minutes. And we were holding a 5-minute break to see if anyone who did not have the opportunity to register to speak to have the opportunity to do so. In our break, we did not receive any new speaker registrants or anyone else join the meeting. So at this time, if no one else wishes to speak, we will move ahead to close the public scoping meeting. For anyone who had difficulty providing testimony today, you're more than welcome to submit written testimony online by navigating to the public meeting page, nyc.gov/nycengage. If we can go to the next slide, I believe we have a reminder on how to submit comments. So again, email or mail to the addresses shown here, 24DCP019K_DL@planning.nyc.gov, or the mailing address shown here. Attention to myself, Stephanie Shalou, 120 Broadway, 31st floor, New York, New York, 10271. The deadline, as a reminder, for submitting comments is Friday, October 27th, 2023 at 5 p.m. It is currently 4:02 p.m. and this public scoping meeting is now closed. Thank you so much for everyone participating today and for taking time out of your busy day. Thank you.